Welcome to the Credit Edge. Ideas on time and working for a living. Let's get started.
Today, we're doing something a little different, an internal audit.
Yeah.
We're stepping away from the financial markets for a bit and turning that same analytical lens inward toward the internal market of our own time, our attention, and our agency.
Mm-hmm.
This deep dive is really for you, the person who gets that daily trade-off, hours for wages, and who feels that constant sort of invisible pressure to just keep the machine moving, even if you don't always know why.
Exactly.
We're going to be exploring a really profound reflection. It's titled The Price of Not Asking Why. And what it does is it frames our daily compliance, not as something easy or benign, but as a kind of compounding debt.
A debt against our future selves.
Yes. So to set the tone for this measured and grounded conversation, let's just start where the reflection starts. It's an insight that, for me, just cuts right to the core of what we feel, but, can't always articulate. I'll read the opening passage. Silence feels safe, but it is the most expensive choice we make. We start the day before we feel ready, the pressure to keep moving without asking anything that slows the machine down.
That opening it's immediately disarming.
It is.
Because it just reframes the whole thing. We're not talking about laziness or, a lack of courage. We're talking about a cost, an unrecognized cost, a systemic fee that gets charged for avoiding friction.
A fee for avoiding friction. I like that.
And when we look at this through the principles of the credit edge, which is our framework for those of us who trade hours for wages, you see the mechanism of that extraction right away. So our mission today is to use that philosophy to really analyze this reflection and figure out the true cost. The unpriced cost of silence. And for you, the listener, we define the credit edge with 5 core principles. We start with the idea that time is the only real currency.
Money stores labor, debt borrows time.
And real wealth, true wealth, is just owning your hours. And we also work from the understanding that systems profit from compliance. They trade our future freedom for comfort today.
So we're taking this very personal, reflective essay and putting a very specific, almost financial, analytical lens on it. We're seeing how these psychological choices, how they actually mirror market risks. Things like leverage, exposure, compounding interest.
Precisely.
It's about taking that internal weight, that feeling of burden, and turning it into something you can calculate, a precise price tag.
Exactly. And that brings us right to the 5th principle, which is that awakening is the foundation. First, you have to see the cost. Every price we pay, it hides another one just beneath it. And if we can map those hidden costs of silence, that's where we begin the journey to reclaim those hours.
Okay, so let's get into the core conflict that the essay identifies. This idea of routine versus awareness. The reflection, it really zeroes in on the start of the day, how most of our days begin. It quotes that feeling of inertia we all know. The alarm rings, the body moves, the mind follows later. That gap, that lag between the body moving and the mind catching up, that's where the first trade is made, isn't it?
Absolutely. The essay points to where awareness should start, but it's also where the system collects its easiest fee. In the moments we rush past because stopping feels costly.
Right.
We are just moving on inherited momentum from yesterday's schedule, yesterday's expectations, yesterday's commitment.
So that lack of initial awareness, that's the first vulnerability.
It is. The body is starting the day already leveraged against its own time.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is really being traded here? In those first rushing moments of the day, before we're even fully conscious.
Well, it's agency traded for automation.
Agency for automation.
Just swapping clarity for momentum. I mean, think about it. If you're rushing, you can't ask why you're rushing. The system requires speed, it requires predictability, and consciousness is it's inefficient.
It slows things down.
It slows things down. So if we don't calculate the cost of that rush, that cost of sacrificing those first moments of clarity, the system does it for us.
Yeah.
And it always favors the entity that profits from us not asking questions.
The essay suggests that this silence, it becomes a really deep habit, and not because we're not curious, but because, and I'm quoting here, asking why feels dangerous. I think I follow that, but help me understand the fear. Why would a simple Trojan feel dangerous?
That's the crucial distinction. That's what unlocks the whole inside of the essay. The principle of awakening is the foundation says you have to see the cost first. The cost we see immediately when we think about asking why is friction. It's conflict. For a working person, silence just feels safer than asking a question. Because a question interrupts the flow.
The flow that guarantees the paycheck.
The flow that guarantees the paycheck.
Right.
The essay says that questions change conversations. They expose gaps in stories we were told to accept.
So if the story is a little shaky, the stability of the job, the balance in a relationship, the question exposes that.
It exposes that gap. And that exposure feels like a threat to your immediate stability, even if that stability was just an illusion to begin with. The danger is that perceived instability.
And that's the relational debt the essay brings up. The cost of conflict just felt too high in the past, so we learned to just go along with it, to carry the burden quietly.
Yes, we choose the known weight of the burden over the unknown volatility of the truth.
It's a trick.
That quiet, internalized burden. That's the foundational debt. And the truth is that this feeling of safety through silence is just the system's preferred way of operating. This is the principle that systems profit from compliance in action. Every hour we trade, every price we pay, it hides another one just underneath.
So if you don't look,
the cost stays unpriced. And unpriced costs always favor the party with the most leverage. The structure, the institution, the expectation itself.
this gets us back to that emotional compliance. The essay talks about the burden carried quietly, felt every time you say, it's fine, when it really isn't.
Yes.
We're basically internalizing all that friction instead of pushing it back to where the pressure is coming from.
And that internalization is the most profitable feature for the system.
How so?
Because when the burden is internalized, we absorb the turbulence. The system, whether that's your workplace or a relationship dynamic, it just keeps running smoothly, efficiently. Because we chose not to rock the boat. We become the shock absorber, and that protects the status quo.
So, if the system benefits from our quiet compliance, why do we? Why do we choose to carry that weight? Why do we prioritize the comfort of it's fine over the clarity of this is not sustainable?
Because the alternative seems more expensive right now, in this moment.
The immediate cost feels too high.
Right. The benefit of compliance for the system is predictable efficiency. The moment you ask why, you're requiring effort from it, explanation, validation, maybe a change in resources or time. When you just carry the burden quietly, you ensure the structure, the job, the debt, the routine can just keep operating without any interruption.
So the trade we're making is our future clarity for today's comfort.
That's exactly. The moment we say, it's fine, we're signing a short-term contract. We're saying the current equilibrium is acceptable no matter what it's costing us internally in stress or exhaustion.
It's like choosing a low-risk, low-return position.
You're exchanging a high-risk, high-reward position, which is truth and agency, for that low-risk, low-return position of comfort and stagnation.
Let's deepen this dissection of compliance. Moving from that moment of awakening to the architecture of the cage itself, it starts with the insidious nature of comfort. The essay says, what felt like routine became comfort, and comfort became a cage. That suggests a very gradual, almost invisible process, a slow erosion of choice.
And that subtle transition is fundamental to how systems maintain control. You see, routine at first is just structure. But when we stop examining that structure, when we just trust it, it evolves, it becomes comfort. And the source is very specific about what happens next. Comfort asks for nothing and takes everything.
That's a chilling line. Asks for nothing and takes everything.
It's a passive drain, a silent fee.
It suggests we're complicit in building our own cage. How does something that feels so harmless become so expensive for our time and our agency?
Because comfort operates by trading fundamental assets for perceived stability. It's a highly leveraged position. The essay actually details 3 painful trades that enable this compliance. We should probably go through each one because this is where compliance completely replaces awareness.
Okay, what's the first trade?
First, we trade clarity for certainty.
Clarity for certainty.
Clarity requires work. It requires looking at the facts, often the unpleasant or complicated ones. It demands active engagement. Certainty, on the other hand, is just a feeling. It's the belief that because things didn't break yesterday, they won't break tomorrow.
And the system provides that certainty through repetition.
Endless repetition. It ensures the next day looks just like the last, even if the foundation supporting all those days is, rotting away.
So choosing to feel certain over being clear, that's the emotional sedative we pay for. We're sacrificing real understanding for the psychological relief of just knowing what's coming next.
We are. And the cost of that trade is incredibly high because you stop preparing for reality. It's like a ship captain who insists the weather is certain just because the sun rose yesterday. He skips the necessary preparations, the clarity, and that just increases his exposure to the inevitable storm.
And what's that rotting foundation in our lives?
It could be anything. The unaddressed skill gap at work, The unspoken resentment in a relation, it's the accumulating inefficiency that's hidden by the sheer momentum of repetition.
Okay. And the second trade?
We trade awareness for routine.
Awareness for routine.
Awareness is active. It's engagement with the present moment, understanding the inputs and outputs of your hours, and it's expensive. It takes mental energy. Routine, though, is passive motion. We become these highly efficient actors in a play we don't even remember auditioning for.
That's classic systems profit from compliance. Keep the input steady, keep the output predictable.
And sacrifice the expensive, unpredictable variable, which is conscious, critical thought. We get really good at doing, but terrible at assessing.
And the third trade, which feels like it seals the cage shut.
Choice traded for familiarity.
Choice for familiarity.
Choice requires energy. It requires analysis, the discomfort of comparing things, accepting you might fail. It's demanding. Familiarity is just doing what's always been done, defaulting to the path of least resistance. The cage isn't built of steel bars, you see.
It's built of familiar habits.
Exactly. Familiar habits and predictable outcomes that we cling to, not because they're good, but just because they're known. The essay sums this trade up perfectly. What we do not question becomes the life we accept.
That point is so powerful. The system doesn't need to use force. It just needs us to stop questioning long enough for the routine to harden into a life that's accepted, not chosen.
In that hardening, that solidification, leads us right into the next part of this, the hidden costs, the truth that we actively try to avoid.
Right. The reflection gives this startling insight into the psychology of carrying a burden. It says, knowing the truth often feels heavier than carrying the burden, and so we carry the burden to avoid the truth. It's so counterintuitive. We choose a known pain over an unknown implication.
We need to analyze why the truth feels heavier, and the source tells us why. Questions slow things down, and they reveal risks we were not ready to price. See, the burden we carry, the quiet resignation, the exhaustion, it's a known, quantifiable daily pain. It's draining, but it's manageable.
Whereas the truth?
The truth forces a reevaluation of everything, your career, your relationship, your financial situation, and that reevaluation is this massive, unpriced risk that we just feel unable to confront, at least not right now.
This is where the credit edge lens is so critical. The essay says markets tell the same story. How does this personal choice carrying the burden to avoid the truth connect to, say, a catastrophic market failure?
It's a direct operational parallel. Avoiding questions is exactly how markets generate systemic failures, not just small losses. Let's break down the progression the source gives us, because this is the mechanism of hidden cost. This is how risk accumulates when we willfully ignore it.
Okay.
First, unasked questions turn into unpriced risks. In finance, if you ignore potential exposure, like the interconnectedness of subprime debt, that risk doesn't just go away. It's just taken off the balance sheet. Personally, if we don't ask the tough questions about the long-term stability of a job or the health of a relationship, that uncertainty becomes this massive looming risk that we're essentially betting against.
So we're selling clarity short and buying uncertainty.
Yes. By refusing to ask, we're taking on this leveraged, unwritten bet that everything will just stay stable forever. We're confident our personal market won't crash.
Which leads to the second point.
Assumptions become exposure. When we just assume our partner knows how we feel, or we assume our job is secure because we show up and do the work, those assumptions are like personal derivatives. They rely entirely on the underlying reality staying constant and predictable.
So the moment that reality shifts,
The moment it shifts, the company announces layoffs, the resentment boils over, our assumptions instantly become unavoidable exposure. Direct, realized loss. The whole structure we built out of comfort just collapses.
and the third step, which seems like the most dangerous part of comfort.
Comfort becomes leverage.
How does that work?
This is critical. Comfort is that feeling that we can handle the status quo, so we relax, we let our guard down.
We stop diversifying our skills. We don't keep a cash buffer.
We let our health habits slip. The system leverages that inertia against us. It leverages the very predictability we purchased with our clarity. We end up with no external options, only internal comfort.
Which leads to the end of the chain. Leverage becomes danger the moment reality shifts. That's the personal margin call. Exactly. When the external world imposes friction, the market shifts, the relationship hits a crisis, that leverage just accelerates the fall. And the essay asks a vital question here. How does life price risk the same way markets do?
And the answer.
Life prices risk by demanding time. We already established time is the only real currency. When reality shifts, the company downsizes, the relationship ends, we have to pay this massive time tax to fix a situation that would have only required a tiny bit of friction, a small question, months or years earlier.
So we pay the difference between the small cost of a question and the devastating cost of a full-blown crisis.
The cost of the leveraged fall.
That brings us to the third part of the dissection, how silence compounds the debt. The cost isn't erased, it just grows exponentially. And it's only payable in our future hours. The essay states, silence may delay the cost, but it does not lower it. And then it delivers that key insight, tying the market metaphor back to our own time. What we avoid does not disappear, it compounds. This is the principle of compounding, but applied negatively. In finance, if you avoid a high-interest debt, the cost just explodes. In life, if we avoid confronting a misalignment, the cost measured in future hours, stress, opportunity cost, it also compounds.
The credit edge view is that money stores labor and debt borrows time.
And silence just keeps the cost hidden until we pay it in time. Every single day we spend just moving along, carrying that quiet burden, is a day the debt we're refusing to look at is accruing interest. And it's payable only in our most valuable currency, non-recoverable time.
Let's run through the specific examples from the source. This is where it gets painfully real. Let's look at the small friction cost versus the enormous crisis cost in each area. The source mentions 4 spheres, starting with the relationship we do not examine.
The debt here is emotional atrophy. It's unaddressed friction. Instead of dealing with the small stuff, mismatched expectations, minor annoyances, unsaid resentments, we just let them pile up.
The cost of friction is small, an uncomfortable 30-minute talk.
Exactly. But the cost of crisis is immense. When the inevitable explosion happens from all that compounded resentment, it demands months, maybe years of time and emotional labor to fix. Or it's just over. We paid compound interest on emotional debt because we chose silence.
Okay, next. The job we never question.
Here, the silence compounds skill obsolescence. It diminishes our leverage. If we never question the role, the purpose, the salary, we're just assuming it's viable long-term.
We're trading the clarity of what the market is actually doing for the certainty of this week's paycheck.
Yes. And meanwhile, the market shifts, new tech comes out, and our specific unexamined skills start to depreciate. The small friction cost of asking a question or learning a new skill now is minimal.
But the crisis cost
is immense. When the company outsources or automates the routine you never questioned, you suddenly need a massive disruptive investment of time and energy just to get back to being marketable. And you're doing it from a position of desperation.
Then there's the most literal one, the debt we avoid confronting.
This is the clearest parallel. Avoiding the bill, hiding the notice, refusing to calculate the interest. It's a guarantee of leverage stress. That avoidance buys you a little mental comfort today by guaranteeing massive leverage stress and time costs tomorrow. You end up paying way more than you ever owed. You're paying the avoidance tax.
Which is the compounded interest on your own fear.
Yes.
And finally, the habits we hope will fix themselves.
Hope is not a strategy. It's just a delay tactic. The quiet daily habits we keep, not moving enough, the low-level consumption, avoiding good sleep, these things compound into negative health and time costs.
The friction to course correct is small, 10 minutes of disciplined effort a day.
But the crisis cost is non-negotiable. It shows up as chronic conditions or sudden health problems that demand overwhelming amounts of time, attention, and money later on, leveraging all your future hours against poor choices from the past.
The power in that is seeing that silence is never protection. It just guarantees that when the bill finally comes due, it's leveraged and overwhelming.
And that realization is the whole point of the awakening, is the foundation principle. The price of silence is paid in compound interest on your time.
Okay, so we've priced the silence, we've mapped the mechanics of the debt. Now we have to turn this around. If silence is the most expensive choice, what is the alternative that gives us the highest yield? The essay pivots here with this beautiful foundational insight. Curiosity is not conflict, it is protection. It's the only tool, the source says, that can reveal what our routine is hiding. So we have to ask the counter question. If silence guarantees compound debt, is curiosity the most profitable investment we can make in our own lives, in our own hours?
Analytically, yes.
Yeah.
It has to be. Curiosity fundamentally shifts you from being a passive, compliant part of a system to being an active risk manager and a value creator. This is the moment the credit edge principle of awareness is reclamation kicks in. True freedom, you see, it doesn't start when you hit some magic number in your bank account. It starts when you begin to see the patterns.
The invisible mechanics that govern our choices.
And extract our hours. Curiosity is the active deployment of that awareness. The source is very clear that questions create space,
Precis.
and that space is agency. When you ask a question, you introduce a pause, a moment where the accelerating momentum of the system just stops. And in that space, you have an opportunity to make a conscious choice, to reprice the risk or to choose a different path. That single moment gives agency back to you.
I follow the logic that questions are protection, but here's where I need to challenge this a bit.
Go ahead.
In the real world, asking a question is often seen as conflict, especially in a workplace or even a family where the status quo depends on quiet acceptance. How do we square that reality with the essay's idea that curiosity is protection?
That's a critical tension, and the essay addresses it by focusing on the intent and the scope of the question. Curiosity is protection because it anticipates and mitigates future conflict. Yes, asking the question creates minor friction today, awkward conversation, a moment of tension.
Right.
But that small friction prevents the catastrophic, leveraged crisis of tomorrow. You're trading a massive, unmanageable conflict later for a small, manageable friction now.
It's a strategic trade.
A very strategic trade. And crucially, that reclaimed agency helps you see who really benefits from you not asking questions. Questions expose incentives. They help us see who benefits from our silence and who loses when we speak.
And that's the key moment of reclamation.
It is. When you understand the incentives, you stop being just a resource for the system and you start acting as an agent within it. If your manager benefits from you working 60 hours a week because their bonus depends on it, your question, your simple, why is this necessary, reclaims that hour. It strategically redistributes the leverage.
It sounds like the essay is advocating for a more disciplined internal audit. A quiet revolution, not a loud public fight.
Precisely. The essay provides the method for responsible curiosity. It's about asking the necessary questions without demanding unnecessary volatility. Clarity does not require confrontation. The questions do not have to be loud. They do not have to be public. They only have to be honest.
Honesty is the only prerequisite.
It's the only one.
Right.
Because the cost of dishonesty is always paid in time. If we ask the question honestly, even just to ourselves, we stop compounding the debt of silence and we start accruing the dividend of awareness. That pivot from cost calculation to yield calculation, that is the entire engine of reclamation.
That brings us to the application, the how-to. It's one thing to agree with the philosophy of questioning, but it's another thing entirely to actually formulate and ask that first honest question in your own life. The reflection emphasizes that these aren't rebellious questions, they're responsible ones.
They're responsible because they protect our remaining hours. Remember the framework. Wealth means owning your hours. These questions are the operational security for your most valuable, finite asset, your time. By asking them, you're making sure that the time you spend aligns with the life you consciously choose, not the one you just passively accept.
Okay, so let's get into detail on these essential, quiet questions the essay gives us. These are the 4 tools of reclamation. The first one is fundamental. It just cuts right through the inertia. Why am I doing this?
This question interrupts that core cycle of the body moves, the mind follows later. If you're doing something, a long-standing routine, and you can't articulate the why without just saying it's comfortable or it's familiar, then you know.
You know you've traded choice for routine.
Right. This question forces an immediate stocktake of your position. If the answer is just because I always have, the cost of that inertia is instantly revealed.
It reintroduces purpose, which is what routine tries to eliminate.
Exactly. It forces you to define whether this action serves your purpose or the system's efficiency. And if the answer is vague, that leads right to the second question, which gets at the hidden costs. What is the real cost?
So this goes way beyond just a financial price tag.
So far beyond. It asks, how many hours of my future, my non-recoverable time, am I mortgaging for this choice? What's the cost in clarity, in emotional energy, in sleep, in relationships? This question forces you to price all those unpriced risks we talked about. It brings the true cost of that silent burden out of the shadows and onto the balance sheet of your life.
For example, staying late to finish a task no one will notice. The financial cost is 0.
Right.
But the real cost is 3 hours of lost sleep and 1 missed chance to deal with a compounding resentment at home. That calculation is everything.
It's the only calculation that matters in this framework. And once we price the risk, we have to look at the incentive structure.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the third question. Who asked me to carry it?
This exposes the power dynamic.
It exposes the incentive structure and identifies who holds the leverage. Is this burden necessary for my survival, or is it just a convenience for someone else? For a company, a social expectation, a family dynamic. Understanding who benefits from your silence is the first step towards strategically withdrawing your compliance. It transforms that general feeling of exhaustion into a specific data point about where leverage is being applied against you.
It's the moment you separate a necessary sacrifice from an unnecessary imposition.
Correct. The burden feels heavier when you think you have to carry it. It feels lighter when you realize the person who benefits most is just the one who imposed it, and they have the lowest cost if you stop. That transparency is the foundation of reclaiming your time.
And finally, the question that is often the most terrifying, because we are so conditioned to fear instability. What happens if I stop?
This is the ultimate stress test. It tests the illusion of necessity. We assume the answer is always catastrophe. I'll lose my job, my relationship will end, I'll be ruined.
But often, the real answer is much smaller.
Often, when you ask this quietly and honestly, the actual answer is just friction for someone else, a temporary inconvenience, a short-term loss of certainty. This question breaks the hypnotic power of routine. It shows you the real boundaries of the cage.
If the honest answer is, nothing irreparable happens, I just have to have an uncomfortable conversation, then the illusion of necessity just dissolves.
And that's the application of courage, not in fighting, but just in pausing.
It's the highest leverage question. It tests the entire structure you've been servicing.
Absolutely. And these 4 questions, when you apply them with discipline, they lead to the ultimate yield, the essay promises. The essay summarizes it perfectly, all links back to the ultimate payoff. Peace compounds. Awareness is the first dividend. Curiosity is protection. Questions are the yield.
That's the goal, isn't it? To shift from constantly servicing debt to accumulating positive interest, to find that peace, that rhythm, that feeling of conscious control over our hours.
Yes. Discipline builds freedom, moment by moment. Time pays the dividend. By choosing awareness over passive compliance, by choosing the responsible question over the comfortable silence, we start accumulating positive interest in our time account. We shift from a highly leveraged debt position to a compounding asset position. And we do it all without some massive life overhaul. The return comes simply from choosing honesty over inertia, reclaiming our hours, one question at a time.
This deep dive has really taken us on a critical journey. From that feeling of just rushing past necessary moments to a rigorous understanding of the leveraged risk in that silence. We started with the quiet, expensive burden of compliance, and we ended with the realization that curiosity isn't conflict. It's actually the most responsible, most profitable form of protection we have. It's about pricing the unpriced and recognizing that what feels like safety right now is often the most costly, systematic extraction of our future time and agency.
And that recognition, that moment of awareness, that's just the beginning. The goal isn't to have some perfectly managed, friction-free life. The final goal is about the courage to reject the assumptions that were imposed on us, to stop carrying burdens that were never truly ours to begin with. And that frees up the time to focus on what actually matters.
A powerful place to end.
We'll leave you with the final, quiet insight from the essay, something for you to mull over and explore this week based on that principle of reclamation. You do not need every answer. You only need the courage to stop accepting the ones that were never yours.
Awareness is the foundation. Take that quiet step, ask that responsible question, and start watching the dividends accrue in your most valuable currency.
Thanks for listening to The Credit Edge. Remember, your time matters. See you next episode.